Hey guys, today I'm talking about home security, which is a little bit of a departure from my regular gardening and greenhouse material, but I wanted to show you one of the most common things you see around the public pools and private pools is these pool noodles, and they can be used to stop criminals and home invaders from invading your home anytime, night or day. This is a protection device that's so inexpensive. You can get it at the dollar stores, and just with a few modifications, you can stop criminals from breaking in. And their favorite tools of the trade involve this piece of electronic equipment that costs less than $25, and they only need a few more pieces to put this together, and they can be inside your home in literally less than 2 or 3 minutes when you're away at work. So at the end of the video, I will talk about what I believe are the ultimate solutions that are not as cheap as a pool noodle, but they work as well, and I'll put links to those as well right at the end there. But let's head into the garage and I'll show you exactly how to assemble this in less than 5 minutes. Now I have one of the old-fashioned wood doors that was put here in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's really a thick, heavy door which helps with insulation. And you would think that the new, more modern metal doors would be even safer, but actually in reality that's not true. It's actually less safe for the metal doors. The wood door is a little bit harder to pull off this little ingenious get into your house in an emergency hack, but it's also a hack that a lot of burglars know and a lot of home invaders know. If you don't believe that, just watch your 6 p.m. news for about 6 months and you'll realize they figured out all this stuff a long time ago, and it spreads quickly among their community. Now right here in the center of your garage door is the weakest point, and it's where these thieves know how to use this trick to get into your house. And you think, well, I've got a security system. Well, that doesn't necessarily help, even if it's monitored. You'd be surprised at how they get past that. I'm going to tell you that in just a minute about how they get past the security. And even if the police do show up, I'll show you exactly how they get past that as well. But let's get started by this first little step you have to take to get into your garage. Now, the first thing that these thieves use to get into your garage is these little wooden shims and a screwdriver or a small pry bar. These little wooden shims make it super simple to use the electronic device that I told you about earlier. So I'm going to give you an up close of the first step of getting into the garage with something as simple as a screwdriver and these wood shims that are used in installing doors and windows. Okay, so we're at the very center of the garage door. We're going to take this screwdriver and carefully put it in there and pry it back and slip our wood shims in there just a little bit to the left and push. And again, just pry a little bit, and you can keep pushing these up until you have a nice size gap. So you've got these almost completely installed, but there's a little bit of a gap here, just enough for what we need for the electronic device. That's the first step. Now the $25 item I talked about, this is called a bore scope or a wall inspection tool. I used this recently in a bathroom where I had a leak. There's a small camera at the end of this. The other end plugs into a C-type on your smartphone. I'm going to use an iPad today to show you, since it's got a bigger screen and you can see it a lot easier, but how to use this in your garage. But we've got the gap installed. Now we're going to install, or we're going to place this camera inside so we can see how to do the last step of getting into your garage. Now what we want to do is we want to carefully put this into our gap, and it fits very easily, and you can see everything in the garage by using this. We don't have to see the entire garage, but I'm going to hook this up to my iPad and show you the screen of how easy this is to see. It's going to take me just a sec. So as you notice, there's a light on the end of the bore scope, and you can see fairly well. So let's put that into the hole there, and I'm hoping you can see my screen as well, but it's a little bit difficult to see. I need to cut a couple lights on into the garage, but this goes up into the garage, and you can see the door mechanism once you get it in there, and I'll show you from the other side as well. Bring back your wood shims up at the top, and you can actually wedge this in there, and your iPhone will literally be hanging because this will be a little bit tighter to get in there, so it'll just hold your iPhone in place. So that's one of the first steps you're going to do this hack if you get locked out of your garage and you just happen to have all this equipment outside and maybe a storage shed. Now, as you can see in the middle of the door, that's our wood shims, and that's where our camera comes in at that same location as well. If you'll look at the mechanism that holds the garage door shut, there's a very faulty situation going on here, or a very bad design flaw that probably would have been able to be overcome with just a little bit more engineering, but it is the weakest point of most people's home security. So that's the first step they're looking at for that particular spot. They put their bore scope in, and some people have gotten so good at this, they can do this without a bore scope with something as simple as a coat hanger, which is exactly what I'm going to use to show you how you get through the next step. So this coat hanger is probably made out of stainless steel, I would imagine. Pretty easy to bend, but that's what you need to do. You need to turn this into a little hook. We're going to go up into the garage, and we're going to wiggle that around just like that. I'm going to reinstall my camera, and I'm going to work with it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes to see how long it takes me to get in there. Now, I've never done this more than once. I've actually successfully done this in the first attempt, but we're going to try it several times until I do it blindly and we get past this little bit of security situation. But I will be able to hear it when I hear something snap on the inside, and I'll show you exactly what that is. Now, once you have this at a vertical angle like this, the door is basically unlocked and it's disconnected from the opener. The other thing they can do is they can fish this over to one side, and if they can get this to go into the gap, then this is another thing. This is the mechanism that releases it also from the opening system. So that's one thing to remember, is that there's two different ways to do it, but if they have the camera the whole time watching this, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. Someone that's really skilled could probably do it without the camera, but with the camera, it becomes a lot easier. But next, I'm going to show you the security way to stop this from happening. And it involves, as I said earlier in the beginning of the video, a pool noodle. Now, before I move on to the fluorescent pool noodle, I just want to talk real quickly about this right here. This is the old-fashioned lock that comes with a lot of doors. You can manually lock it. Some of them on the newer doors have the locks on the sides. It's just a pull-in thing, and the door will not go up. But if you're like me and you like to park inside, then this would not be engaged when you weren't at home. So that's one of those things that if you don't park inside, you don't use your garage doors very often, make sure that you lock it either with this type of lock or the locks on the newer doors that lock on the side. It locks it into the frame of the door. That's really important to do, that if you're not a big garage user and your doors don't get used that often, make sure you lock it every time you use it. The first thing we're going to do when we create our pool noodle defense system is we're going to measure from that device all the way to our end of our pull cord, which is about 20 and a half inches. So we need to make sure we get that measurement exactly right. So we're going to say 20 and a half inches. Better to be a little bit too long than too short. So let's say 20 and a half to 21. So I brought the pool noodle over to our workbench. We're going to cut this exactly 21 inches. And we're going to also make a razor. We're going to take a razor blade and we're going to cut this all the way down to the middle. And at the top, we may make a little V up there if it's a little bit on both sides, the back side and the front side. But on one side, we're going to make a cut down. So let's take our measurement first and cut our 21-inch pool noodle, which is about right there. I'm going to take a pair of scissors, which I think is a little bit easier than a razor blade. Okay. Now we're going to cut down the full length of one side of the pool noodle from top to bottom. Straight line. Okay. And we make sure we separate this all the way down, make sure it's open. Now on the back side, we're going to make another small, about a 1-inch cut just at the top. We may have to cut this into a V if we have problems, but I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So we have two cuts at the top, one that goes all the way down and one that's just a short distance from the top. Now, a lot of people might say, why not just remove this cord and maybe put a piece of the pool noodle over our mechanism right here? Well, you can do that, but if you have a power outage and you need to let your door up, or if you have an emergency and there's no power, you're going to be trapped in your garage. So you don't want to remove this. This is really a good safety mechanism. But what we're going to do is we're going to have our cut facing the front of the garage, not the door. And we're going to put this all the way down from the top to the bottom. A little tricky there from down here. I really need a ladder to do this. But we're going to go all the way down. We're going to put the plastic part in there as well. And we want to get it as close to the top as possible. Make sure that's facing the right way and push it all the way up. Now, the reason I cut that V in there is we want this to go all the way up as high as possible to cover up the mechanism. So I'm going to get a ladder and push it up and make sure it's coming in complete contact with the mechanism and covering up that little tripping device. Now we're going to climb up here and make sure that little V we cut in the back, we want this completely covered, and we want it nothing sticking out. Now, what I would recommend is taking some duct tape, maybe some electrical tape, and wrapping around the top to make it extremely hard to get it in there, and maybe even wrap it all the way down. You just want this sealed up. That coat hanger coming in is going to be very hard to get this to do anything other than to swing back and forth. So we want to make sure we're protecting that trip mechanism and make sure that it's as impossible as you can imagine to get this pull cord back out to the outer area and then pull it from the outside, or to trip it from the inside using the bore scope. So just remember, we want to make sure this is secure as possible. Now you can just grab this and pull it a little bit. It'll come down and it might trip the mechanism, or you may have to take the cord back out and trip it with it out being, but it's very hard for them to get that coat hanger anywhere around this mechanism once it's in place and taped really well. Now what I've done is I've taken some duct tape, taped to the top, taped down the seam of our pool noodle, and almost to the bottom. The reason I've left this small portion open is I can open it up and pull out this cord if I ever have to get out quickly, emergency, power outage, whatever. But this makes it extremely hard for that coat hanger to trip the mechanism, or like I said earlier, to fish the cord back outside and pull it from the outside of the garage. So that's just really important that this stays in place. You may have to, do a little bit of work with it to make sure it's tight and it stays on there. But this, I found, that stays on there for quite a while. It works great, and it's a great preventer in stopping some thieves from getting inside. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, how do they get around alarm systems and the police? And I'll tell you that in 1 second. Now, as I mentioned before, criminals, some of them have all sorts of tricks for getting around law enforcement alarm systems and everything like that. And I'll tell you, the simplest way for them to beat the system when it comes to the police showing up at your house is, once they're inside the garage, they'll reset the mechanism where it won't let up and down. The police come to your house, they try the doors, maybe they even look in the windows if they can see into the garage. There's nobody there, there's no lights are on. Criminals will hide in things like closets. They will even get into the car and hide in the back seat, or even in extreme cases, they might even hide in the trunk if they can get back out. They might lock themselves in, and then you've caught them in your own special way. But one thing they'll do is, when the police show up, they make sure that everything is reset and back to normal. And the police might make a trip out, alarm is blaring. They just assume maybe a pet set it off, maybe thunder, whatever caused your alarm system to go off. They just chalk it up to a false alarm. They might have to make a second trip. And if that happens often at your home, you're kind of written off as just a problem alarm system, and they won't take you as seriously. So just remember that just because you have an alarm system, this isn't a guarantee that they're going to get caught. But there's one other thing you can do that will absolutely make it almost impossible for them to go around that, what I just talked about hiding in your garage while the police are outside looking for any sign of a break-in. Now, this is the method I believe is best for preventing the trick I just told you about hiding in the garage. And I'm walking around, and this is a motion sensing camera in my garage. I have 4 of these cameras inside and outside of my house, and many more on the inside. It might seem like an extreme thing, but this uploads to the cloud. It's monitored. It sends a notification to my phone. I know instantly when someone is in the garage or anywhere around the house, even the front door, back door, wherever. So I'm notified. It's uploaded to the cloud. So if the camera was destroyed, the criminal happened to see it, it's still in the cloud, and I've still received a notification. So this particular system is made by Tapo. I'll put a link in the description because I think it's one of the best cameras made. I've had it. I had very few problems with it. I had some Wi-Fi issues where it didn't have a good signal, but other than that, it's worked flawlessly for many, many months. So I recommend it. This is the one I use. I'm not being sponsored by Tapo, not getting a kickback from the company. I'm just saying this is the one I like best. So I would highly recommend Tapo, T-A-P-O, and check in the description down below, and I'll put the link. The other is the particular alarm system I use, and I'll talk about that next. Now, I've had other alarm systems before in my house, and this has to be one of the nicest ones I've ever had. I installed it myself. It has all sorts of features. It monitors floods, fire, glass breakage, movement, motion sensing, door opening, window opening. It's made by Simply Safe. I think probably everybody has heard their commercials. If you listen to any type of radio or TV, they advertise quite a bit. So I'm really happy with this system. It was a little bit expensive because I bought every kind of sensor they sold because I wanted to test them all. I've had water leaks before that caused a little bit of damage, so I wanted to make sure it covered everything, any possible way in, whether somebody breaks glass, there's movement inside the house. It's also pet safe. It won't, your pets, dogs, cats, you can set it, the sensitivity, so you don't have to worry so much about pets setting your alarm off if you have indoor pets. So I'm really happy with this as well. I'll put a link in the description to the Simply Safe system, and you can decide whether or not it's for you. But there's a lot of different varieties out there. You can try one if you don't think Simply Safe is in your price range, or you just want to go with a particular brand, that's fine too. But I personally like Simply Safe the most. So I probably didn't talk as much as I should about this bore scope, and this is pertaining to a completely different type of problem. If you have a water leak and you're not sure where it's at, you can drill a small hole in your wall, and there's an attachment on this where you has a mirror on it, and you can look down or up and you can see a lot easier. So that's another thing that makes a huge difference if you can detect a water leak before it gets really bad. As I mentioned, that particular system I have by Simply Safe has water and flood protection sensors that if they get wet, any amount of water gets on the bottom of it. I have one under my dishwasher, next to my hot water heater, next to a downstairs bathroom. So that way, if I ever have a water leak, this right here will tell me where it's coming from, and Simply Safe will tell me within minutes that there is a water leak. So guys, that's how a simple pool noodle can stop a home invasion or a robbery while you're at work. It's really a cheap solution, and I always believe in home security. I find that having a very large German Shepherd helps as well, because he'll scare anybody away that even comes close to my fenced area. So guys, I just want to say thanks so much for watching. And if you have a question about this video or any previous video, if you'll become a subscriber before you leave the comment, that's how I filter all my comments through my subscribers. I just get so many comments, I would spend all day long responding to them. So if you'll do that for me, I sure would appreciate it. So have a great day.